Okay, hello guys. Today we're going to be talking about the forensic ballistic. This will serve as the introductory part of the subject matter forensic ballistic. And before we proceed in talking about the concept of forensic ballistic, let us first appreciate the value of studying forensic ballistic. Well, as you can see, karamihan ng crime ngayon is being committed with the use of firearm, be it that's a crime of, property crimes, halimbawa yung pagnanakaw, pang-hold up, they're usually being committed with the use of firearm. And also we have crimes against persons like pagpatay, um, pananakit, pananakot, even panggagahasa are sometimes being committed with the use of firearms. So the use of firearm is very rampant nowadays in the field of criminology, as this involves mostly in the commission of a certain crime. Under the crime triangle, as you can see that the field of criminology is studying the crime triangle, what causes a person to commit a crime, what are the factors that causes a person to commit a crime. So we have the crime triangle to explain that. And those are, like, for example, the motive and intent, which are purely psychological in nature, and we have the opportunity being provided by the victim themselves, and also that is more on psychological in nature. Now, when we talk about instrumentation, this refers to the different instrument, no, yung mga kagamitan na karamihan or karaniwang ginagamit para makomit ang isang crime. At dito na nga papasok yung firearms as one of the main instrument that are being usually used as instrument in the commission of crime. So firearms is really a significant instrument that we should be talking about, especially in the field of law enforcement, in the field of crime prevention, in the field of criminal investigation. So with that, the contribution of forensic ballistic to the field of criminal investigation, as well as in the field of criminology, is very uh, significant. That's why there's a need for us to talk about forensic ballistic. Okay, so before we proceed to that, let us first define what is ballistic. Ballistic is defined as the science of the motion of projectiles from the moment of firing until the impact at the target. So basically, when we talk about ballistic in general, this refers to the science of motion of projectiles. No? This studies the different factors that may affect the motion of the projectile. When we talk about projectile, we are referring to any object that is being propelled by a certain instrument. Okay, they can be in the form of a bullet, they can be in the form of a ball, they can be in the form of a slug, or any other uh, object that is usually in a solid form, no? na ipro-propel ng uh, isang mechanical action, usually through gas compression, through chemical explosion, through air compressions, something like that. So they are being propelled. So when an object is being propelled, what causes what are the factors that can probably affect its movement? Like for example, gaano kaya kalayo ang matravel ng isang bullet kapag na-propel from a firearm? So, what causes the or what factors may affect the distance between the firearm to its maximum range? Parang gano'n. Gaano kaya kalayo yung aabutin ng isang object pag naipropel from a certain instrument? And what are the factors that may cause the um, the increase of the range of that projectile, what can cause the decrease of the range of that projectile, the the movement of the projectile from the moment it is being propelled through the firearm. So ano-ano yung mga yun, like we're going to be talking about the pull of gravity, we're going to be talking about the air resistance, we're going to be talking about the powder charge from the firearms, as all of these things causes really the accuracy, the efficiency of a certain object being propelled from a certain uh, instrument. So I'm not really talking about specific instrument here, as you can see, I'm usually using the word um, instrument kasi it's not only firearm. So when we talk about ballistic, it's not just focus on firearm itself, okay? Kasi marami namang object na pwedeng mag-propel ng isang object, okay? Papunta sa isang lugar na hindi naman considered as firearm. Kasi general term ang ballistic, guys. So ballistic, as we are talking about, is the science that study all of those things that I mentioned, all of the possible factors that may affect the motion of the projectiles and may affect the accuracy of a certain projectile. So all of those things are the concerns of ballistic. Now we have here the branches of ballistic. We have internal ballistic, we have external ballistic, we have terminal ballistic, and we also have the forensic ballistic, as that's the part wherein we can include the subject matter forensic ballistic with. So let's talk about the first three branches of ballistic. So we have here internal ballistic. Internal ballistic is also known as the initial ballistic. Ang pinag-aaralan under internal ballistics are the different actions that are taking um, in inside the instrument. Okay, ngayon pag-usapan na natin yung firearm kasi I think dito na papasok yung interest natin with regards to firearm. So under internal ballistic, ang pinag-aaralan dito, guys, is yung mga actions na nangyayari bago lumabas yung bullet sa muzzle ng firearm. So what are those? Like for example, the action of pulling the trigger. Yung pagkalabit mo ng gatilyo, that is part of the internal ballistic. Since pagkalabit mo ng gatilyo, what will happen next and how will the pulling of the trigger affect or cause the propulsion of the bullet from the firearm. So, ano ba yung nangyayari usually? Pagkalabit mo ng gatilyo, it will trigger a mechanism wherein the hammer of the firearm will hit the firing pin, and the firing pin will hit the base of the ammunition, which causes ignition from the primer, and the primer, since it was ignited, will um, ignite also the propellants or the gunpowder of the ammunition, and the burning gunpowder will cause explosion, and that explosion will then cause the expulsion of the bullet from the ammunition. The bullet will now travel through the rifling of the firearm, which causes its rotating movement, and then it will be released on the muzzle of the firearm. So all of those things, before pa lumabas itong bullet na ito from the muzzle of the firearms, those are still part of the internal ballistic. Okay? So kung ano mga activities or actions ang nangyari under that before the expulsion of the bullet from the muzzle of the firearms will be under internal ballistic. Ano-ano yung mga pwedeng mangyari yun? So yung maliban doon sa mga binanggit ko, pwede ring mangyari doon yung pagkakaroon natin ng tinatawag nating identifying marks Either either sa bullet, okay, pwedeng magkaroon tayo ng bullet fingerprinting doon kasi nga 'pag pumasok itong si bullet doon sa rifling, magkakaroon tayo ng different markings or the rifling marks na tinatawag. Yung pag-hit ni uh, firing pin doon sa base ng ammunition will cause also the firing pin marks. And yung pag-extract ng yung extracting mechanism na kung saan is na-extract si empty ammunition doon sa chamber ng firearm will cause extracting marks, and then a certain mechanism also will eject the fired cartridge from the chamber of the firearm, and that will cause also yung tinatawag nating um, ejecting marks. So maraming nangyayari doon pa lamang sa loob ng firearm, no? Bago pa man lumabas yung bullet sa muzzle. And all of those things are very much important in the field of forensic ballistic. Kasi lahat ng markings na maiiwan either sa bullet or sa fired cartridge case will have its mark on them. And also, those marks are the basis of firearm identification, no? Kaya nakikilala natin kung saan galing yung isang cartridge case, saan galing yung isang bullet na nakita natin sa crime scenes are because of those different markings na naiiwan doon sa ammunition kapag ito ay nagagamit. Okay? So, that's the concept of internal ballistic. I know that it has a lot of things to be concerned of under internal ballistic, but then I do believe that we will be discussing more on those in the future discussion. Let us proceed to external ballistic. External ballistic deals with the motion of the projectile from the time that it escaped from the gun muzzle. So, sunod doon, paglabas na, kasi what initiate the external ballistic now is when there is already the sound caused by the explosion, na explosion of the gunpowder charge of the ammunition, causing it to eject or propel the bullet from the cartridge case. Now, paglabas ni bullet doon sa muzzle, doon sa tip, no? Kasi the muzzle is yun yung pinakadulo na ng barrel natin, no? Paglabas niya, magkakaroon na ngayon tayo ng sound, the booming sound, which signifies that the bullet has already moved out from the muzzle. So paglabas niya ngayon, pagtunog ngayon ng putok ng barrel, yung pagputok niya na, I mean, may sound na kasi. So doon na nag-i-start yung tinatawag nating external ballistic. So paglabas ni bullet sa muzzle ng firearm, that is now the um, start of his external ballistic. So what is the concern of his external ballistic? So whatever things happen, no, the moment na makalabas na si bullet from the muzzle of the firearm, all of those now are concerned of the external ballistic. So papasok na diyan yung trajectory, papasok na doon yung mga tinatawag nating tattooing in the field of legal medicine, na kung saan it is caused by the different unburnt powder na lalabas, na ibubuga ng muzzle natin the moment na magkaroon na ng explosion doon sa loob. So the range of external ballistic is the moment it leaves, or the moment the bullet leaves the gun muzzle until it reaches the target. So hanggang umabot, tumama na yun doon sa target. So yun yung mga concern niya. Maraming mga pwede ring pag-aralan dito, like for example, pinakamahalaga nga dito yung tinatawag nating the trajectory, no? The trajectory is very important in the field of criminal investigation, especially if we're dealing with crime committed with the use of firearm, because it usually gives an idea to the investigator about the location of the perpetrator, yung nagpaputok ng barrel to his target. So the trajectory may give the investigator a clue kung saan located si subject nung nagpaputok siya ng barrel, like the case of the execution of Mayor Halili, wherein he was assassinated by a certain criminal with the use of I don't know if it's a rifle or a sniper. Yeah, long firearm. No, so they use a long firearm, which means that the perpetrator is not readily seen within the vicinity. Nasa malayo siyang lugar. And by just studying the trajectory of the bullet, no, saan pumasok sa katawan ng biktima yung bullet na yan, they can be able to come up with an idea kung saan nanggaling yung putok or saan nanggaling yung nagpaputok. So that's the importance of the trajectory. And also in the field of law enforcement, such as yung firearm range, no, gaano ba kalayo ang aabutin ng isang baril, that's also important because in the field encounter, pag nagkakaputukan na, no, it is very much important also that you know the capacity of your firearm, gaano kalayo yung range na kayang abutin ng firearm mo. That is to have a better plan in dealing with these types of encounter. So aside from trajectory, papasok din dito yung tinatawag nating air resistance, no? Ano ba yung effect ng air doon sa velocity ng bullet natin upon its expulsion, no? Paglabas ni bullet sa muzzle ng firearm, ano ba yung ano ba yung pwedeng maging epekto ng hangin sa velocity niya, sa gaano kabilis mag-travel yung bullet to from the firearm to the target. So that's also part of the external ballistic. Okay? So marami pa actually under external ballistic, but then what's important here is like the velocity, air resistant, um, the gyroscopic action, no, paikot na yung pag-ikot ng bullet while in flight. So those are also important as they usually gives um, innovations or improvements to to the history of firearm or to the manufacturing of firearms, since like for example yung gyroscopic action, before they're using yung mga non-rifled firearm, which is usually smooth bore, no, what type of bullet they're propelling usually is in the form of ball, na kung saan um, walang riffling effect, no, walang gyroscopic effect. Ibig sabihin, straight lang ang travel ng mga projectiles nila before. And they realized that if we add uh, gyroscopic action while the bullet or the projectile is in flight, it will cause higher accuracy, higher bullet velocity or projectile velocity, and higher penetrating power. So all of those are usually caused by studying the motion of projectile through mid-flight. No? So yung mga yun is improvement brought by the external ballistic itself. So mahalaga din sa field natin yung external ballistic. Okay? Then we have terminal ballistic. So terminal ballistic refers now to the different actions that are usually transpiring the moment the bullet hits the target. Okay? So kanina, under external ballistic, paglabas ni bullet sa muzzle hanggang pagtama sa target, that's external ballistic. Now, pag tumama na yung bullet sa target, that is now also the terminal ballistic. Ano-ano naman yung mga pwedeng mangyari the moment na tumama si bullet doon sa target? Okay, so that's the concept, or that's the concern of terminal ballistic. Now they are dealing with the effect of the projectile on the target. What happens after the bullet strikes the target? So later on we will be talking about them. But anyway, these things will surely happen, ano? Pag tama ni projectile doon sa target, magkakaroon tayo either ng indentation, and yung indentation na tinatawag natin is when the force, the terminal energy is not enough, no? To penetrate the target. Like for example is masyadong malayo yung target mo, and then pag abot ng bala sa kanya, hindi na ganoon kabilis ang travel niya, that causes the uh, bullet to unsuccessfully penetrate the subject or the target, and that is indentation, no? Pag kulang na ang lakas ni bullet para mag-penetrate, or ni projectile para mag-penetrate doon sa target, be it a human being, be it an object, or so on, then there will be a slight markings, no? Either mamula yon kasi meron pa rin namang force yon, but it's not enough to penetrate, no? Para pumasok yung bala sa loob ng target mo. So that will cause indentation na tinatawag. Pwede rin magkaroon ng penetration upon the projectile hitting the target. So pag sinabi nating penetration, ibig sabihin si projectile has sufficient energy, and the velocity is still high, which causes the projectile to penetrate, no? Papasok doon sa loob ng subject mo. Okay? So for example, ang target mo is tao, no? Pag baril mo sa kanya, malakas pa yung malakas pa yung terminal velocity, no? Mabilis pa yung travel ng bullet from the firer uh, to the subject, to the target, then it will cause penetration. Papasok yung bala doon sa katawan, or papasok yung bala doon sa loob ng target, and we call that the penetration. Okay? What about perforation? Now, perforation talks about whether the bullet or the projectile pass through and through your subject. Tumagos ba yung subject, yung tumagos ba yung bullet sa subject natin upon firing, no? Kasi these are indicative, no? Whether we are talking about indentation, whether we are talking about penetration, or perforation, these are all indicative of the distance of the shooter to the target, no? Gaano kalayo kaya si shooter sa kanyang target. Kasi kung indentation lamang, pwede nating sabihin, okay, medyo malayo na siguro. The distance is approximately like this, kasi nga hindi na nag-penetrate, hindi na pumasok si bullet or si projectile doon sa kanyang target. So ibig sabihin, malayo yung yung subject natin. Malayo yung shooter natin. That's why ganyan lang yung naging cost doon sa katawan. So other than that, pwede rin naman kasi magkaso like maging factor yung aside from distance, kasi we know that for a fact that when it comes to firearms, the farther the target is, the less accurate you become, no? Habang lumalayo yung target mo, no, the less accurate you become, kasi nga the the longer the distance the bullet or the projectile will travel, no, until it reaches the target, the higher the effect of the air, the gravity to that bullet, which causes the inaccuracy of that bullet in hitting the target. So that's the principle, no? Habang lumalayo yung target, lumiliit yung chance mo na mapatamaan mo siya. So as we are talking about indentation, then that is also indicative, no, na medyo malayo na si shooter natin sa kanyang target. And penetration, pag nag-penetrate, ibig sabihin nasa sapat na distansya pa rin si subject natin doon sa shooter. So those are the relevance of talking about these things, no? Hindi lang siya basta um, this is the effect, so what now, no? So ano ngayon kung indentation lang ang cause ng bullet upon hitting the target? So ano yung pwede nating maging conclusion? They are relevant really in the field of criminal investigation. Okay, so perforation. So ano naman masasabi natin pag yung projectile or yung bullet nag-perforate sa subject, tumagos. So ibig sabihin, either number one, mataas ang kalibre ng baril na ginamit or hindi naman kaya is malapit lang si shooter sa kanyang subject. No? That is very significant in the field of investigation. May mga ano na to, significant information that it can provide pag sinabi, oh, malapit lang pala si um, target doon sa kanyang victim. Malapit lang pala si shooter doon sa kanyang victim. So, these things will establish a lot in the field of investigation, such as motive, no? Such as whether they know each other or not. Yung mga ganun ba? So, importanteng mapag-usapan din to under terminal ballistics. We have also ricochet. Ricochet refers to the bouncing back of the bullet upon hitting the target. Usually, it happens when the uh, projectile or bullet terminal velocity is sufficient. However, the target is has the capacity to deflate the effect of the bullet. Either yung tinamaan niya masyadong matigas, which causes the penetration. No? Pag medyo okay pa naman ang terminal velocity ng bullet natin, malakas pa pero talagang matigas, makunat lamang, or the terminal velocity is no longer enough, no? Parang bitin yung kanyang velocity to penetrate or to cause indentation to the subject. Instead, ang mangyayari lang dito, mag-bounce back lang siya, no? Nangyayari 'yan usually pag tinatamaan natin mga rubber, no? Yung mga hard objects, mga ganyan, mahirap penetrate, that will cause ricochet, no? So again, what does it signifies kung mga ganon? So um ricochet usually cause unintentional damage, na karaniwan nangyayari. Like for example, you're trying to shoot a certain target, but however, the the bullet did not penetrate the subject or the target. Instead, it bounced back and hit another one. So in the field of criminal investigation and in the field of criminal liability, in determining the criminal liability of the person, it's important also to establish whether the ricochet is can really happen, no? And was it intentional? All things like that, no? And also that gives us a fair warning also in handling firearm, no, that we should be careful with regards to the things that we are shooting at, kasi it will cause ricochet. Maybe it will hit a certain bystander, but it has a tendency also to victimize the shooter itself, no? So those are the things, no? But we just included ricochet as part of the terminal ballistic kasi it usually happens, and it may be a significant phenomena in terminal ballistic, yung tinatawag nating ricochet. But sa ricochet, it's the bouncing back of the bullet upon hitting the target. And we have also fragmentation. It's the deterioration of the projectile upon hitting the target. Usually, pag hard object na naman yan, pag hindi siya nag-bounce back, no, pwedeng ang mangyari dyan is mag-disintegrate into small pieces itong si projectile. And there are some bullets also, like for example, the dum-dum bullet, no? Yung dum-dum bullet has the capacity to fragment itself upon hitting the target kasi may mga cavity na siya doon sa tip ng bullet. Talagang pasadya na siya na pagtama niya, ang characteristic ni Dumdum is bumuka siya or mag-fragment, mag-turn into several pieces, which increase the penetration damage that the bullet will cause upon hitting the target. So there are those types of bullet na talagang pasadya. But then doon sa mga hindi naman pinasadya na mag-fragment, the cause of the fragmentation is usually is target itself, no? Kung masyadong matigas si target, no, ang pwedeng mangyari is mahati-hati into pieces yung bullet pag tama niya. And in the field of, legal medicine, that usually cause more damage na tinatawag. And sometimes it's hard to identify the point of entry and point of exit, especially if may characteristic itong si bullet na mag disintegrate. Kasi usually in the field of forensic medicine, di ba, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito is the um, point of entry and point of exit, how to determine the point of entry of the bullet and how to determine the point of exit. And usually the basis is kapag medyo malayo na, usually is sinasabi natin na mas malaki ang opening ng point of exit compared doon sa point of entry, which can be reversed if may kakayahang mag-disintegrate or na-fragment yung bullet upon hitting the subject, which of course will not cause a massive um, a massive cavity in the exit point of the bullet, but rather causes a slit like, exit point, no? So relevant din yan sa criminal investigation, yung action na ito na nangyayari when the bullet strikes the target. We have also detonation. Detonation refers to the capacity of the bullet upon hitting the target to explode. No? Meron yung mga bullet na talagang pasadyang merong powder charge doon sa kanyang dulo, which cause explosion upon hitting the target. No? And they usually term those things as the double action bullet. No? Yung mga may powder charge sa dulo niya na kung saan pagtama niya doon sa target, no? The powder charge on the bullet will explode, so that causes more damage than it has already brought on hitting the target. No, these are very dangerous type of bullet, no? Kasi the damage will really be unacceptable in the field of war and so on. I think itong mga ganito ay pinagbabawal na sa United Nation in terms of etiquette in entering into war, no? Same din sa dumdum bullet na yan. So they have the convention wherein they prohibited these types of weapon to be used in warfare. Okay, so yan. There are those types of bullet really that explodes upon hitting the target. Then we have also the combustion and incendiary effect, no? Which usually transpire if again the bullet has the capacity to do so. Ibig sabihin, pinasadya na naman si bullet na lagyan ng mga incendiary effect that will cause the creation of fire upon hitting the target, and usually nandun yan sa base ng bullet na kung saan pagtama niya, no, it will cause a slight ignition, lalo kung tatama siya ngayon doon sa mga tinatawag nating highly combustible or flammable materials which cause ignition, contrary to what we really think, no, na a bullet can cause fire. No, I think it will cause fire even if without powder charge, na even if without those incendiary materials being loaded to the bullet itself, if no nagkakaroon lamang ng pag-create ng apoy pag si bullet tumama sa isang object if yung tatamaan niya is it happens to be a combustible or flammable materials, na kasi karamihan nakikita natin sa movies na kung saan babarilin niya lang yung ganito, it will cause fire. Depende yan. Ang magkukos lang ng fire if kung itong bullet na wala namang powder charge, walang mga incendiary materials or chemicals na nakalagay doon sa bullet, pag tumama siya sa mga combustible materials, like for example, tumama siya sa isang tangke ng gasoline, and it happens that pagtama niya, merong iyong metal cover which cause a little bit of spark or ignition, and then highly combustible pa yung liquid na yun, then it will cause definitely fire. But if you're just going to shoot a firearm into a tank of water, then it will not cause any fire. Okay? So, meron yung pasadya na talagang nalalagyan ng powder charge, no? Yung isang bullet that even if you shoot them to trees, to yung mga tuyong materials, they will cause fire. But definitely, I think what plays important here is that what type of target is being hit, no? Kasi kahit naman may powder charge yan, meron yung incendiary or combustible materials na kasama. Pag tumama naman sa not combustible uh, subject or target, then it will not cause any fire. Anyway, there are those bullet that has that specific capacity to ignite fire upon hitting the target. And there are those types of bullet which has no capacity to do so, but it happens that the target that was hit during the during the action of firing was a combustible or flammable material, then it will cause ignition. Okay, so that's with regards to the different things that transpire during terminal um, ballistic. Now let's talk about some of the terms that we should be familiar of in the field of forensic ballistics, such as number one, we have here projectile. What is projectile, by the way? Projectile refers to an object that can be fired or launched from a firearm. So we are referring to the different types, as I mentioned earlier, like for example, whether that is a ball, whether that is a slug, whether that is a bullet, or any other solid object that can be propelled from a certain instrument and usually from a firearm. So that is a projectile. We have also the term firearm. By the way, the definition we had provided here was the legal definition of firearm in adopted by our law in Philippines. So we have here the definition: firearms or arms includes rifles, musket, carbines, shotgun, pistol, revolvers, and other deadly weapons from which bullet, balls, shots, shells, or other missiles may be discharged by means of gunpowder or other explosives. Okay, so what causes the expulsion must be either that is through gunpowder or any other explosion, such as gas explosion, that can be considered also to include yung mga firearm na kung saan ang ginagamit nila to propel a certain projectile was compressed gas, no? Yun, kasali pa rin sila under the definition of firearms. However, um, take into consideration also that the term firearm also includes air rifles, no? Yung mga air rifles na yan, na sinabi ko nga, yung mga ang nagkokos ng expulsion of the bullet or the projectile from the firearm is through compressed air, no? And that is air explosion also. They are also considered as firearm except, no? So we have here the exemption, except those of small caliber and of limited range that are used as toys. So we have pellet gun, no, as not considered as firearms, and we have also I'm not sure with regards to BB gun if they are already considered as firearm. Yung airsoft na tinatawag, they have been always been debatable whether they can be considered as firearm or not, since number one, they are being propelled by an explosive or explosion through air, through compressed air or compressed gas, and I believe some other countries includes them as a firearm, by the way, no? I believe they includes them as a firearm, especially if yung mga bullet, yung mga projectile na ginagamit are metals like bullet balls, na tinatawag na matitigas na siya. Yes, they can be considered as deadly, na. But for other toy guns, yung mga like we have pellet guns, which usually contains yung mga plastic projectile and so on. They cannot be considered as firearms. So airsoft, if you're using probably those metal balls, then that is already considered as deadly weapon. And with regards to their capacity, medyo malayo rin ang kanilang capacity. Medyo malayo rin ang range na kayang abutin nila. And take note also that the barrel of any firearm is considered as a complete firearm for all purposes under the law. Why did they included this definition? It's because there are those who manufacture firearm, uh, yung mga homemade na tinatawag like paltik and so on. Pwede ka nang magpaputok using yung sumpak na tinatawag or paltik na tinatawag, yung mga homemade firearm wherein they're converting different types of firearm for um for sometimes for personal reasons or for criminal purposes. Yes, they can convert the barrel of the firearm into a firearm. Kasi if you have the barrel, you have the reflings. All you need to do is strike the primer, no? Load some ammunition to it, strike the primer, no? And that can cause already an ignition, no? And burnt the gunpowder, and then expel the bullet from the cartridge case, and then you have the barrel where the bullet can travel, and you have the same effect as having a firearm. That is why I believe that it's wise to include barrel as already as considered as firearm already, because they really are dangerous itself within themselves. They can already function as a firearm even without the other composition, as long as you have the capacity to do so, or you have the knowledge to utilize the barrel itself as a complete firearm. So yes, I think that's valid to include that as a firearm. So with that definition alone, no, we have under our law with regards to the possession of firearms, even if you are just holding a barrel of a firearm, that is already considered as illegal possession of firearms if you don't have any authority to possess or to carry such thing. So take that into consideration also. We have also ammunition. No, by the way, ammunition refers to any loaded shell for rifles, musket, carbines, shotguns, revolvers, and pistol, from which a bullet, ball, shot, shell, or other missiles may be fired by means of gunpowder and any other explosive. Okay, so why do we need to define this? Because ammunition itself is considered as, or carrying ammunition itself is considered as punishable under our penal laws here in Philippines. Now, what is ammunition? So ammunition pertains to um, a loaded shell, no? Ammunition has usually a part, no? Kasi sometimes we fail to recognize the distinction between a bullet and an ammunition. So when we talk about ammunition, that refers to the complete set of a loaded cartridge, which means it has a bullet, yung nasa top portion niya, yun yung tumatama sa tao. Then we have the cartridge case, and the cartridge case contains propellant o yung gunpowder na tinatawag, and then meron yung tinatawag ng primer kompleto doon. So that whole composition is known as the ammunition or loaded cartridge. So carrying of that alone is already considered in our law, no? We have the yung current event, not really current, but I think it's 2 years ago, where yung mga laglag bala, I think sa custom, wherein yung mga overseas Filipino worker or yung mga Filipinos coming back and out in our countries are being held for possession of ammunition. Just because they happen to carry one, they're already being held and being prosecuted for their crime. So ayun, whether that's a modus of the Bureau of Custom before, or that is really happening, that people are really carrying a single ammunition, either for the purpose of good luck or whatever the reason is, whatever their belief is, it's important to know that carrying such thing is considered as a crime in our country if you don't have the authority or license to carry or to possess any of those. Okay, so that's just a little bit of inclusion on the topic ammunition. We have also the propellant. I made mention of this already. A propellant refers to the charge that the projectile contains. Okay, so propellant, in other terms, we call that the gunpowder. So the gunpowder charge of the ammunition is known as, or is also known as, propellant. We have the rifling. We have the term rifling, the spiral lands and grooves found at the bore of the gun barrel. So the rifling causes the gyroscopic action of the bullet when it is in its travel, no? When it is in its motion. So what causes the rotating movement of the bullet while traveling from the firearm to the target is caused by the rifling, no? And the rifling is composed of the spiral lands and grooves. This is very important because this cause the individual markings on the bullet itself, no? Ito yung nagsisilbing ah, fingerprint ng firearm, yung tinatawag nating rifling. Kasi pagdaan ni bullet doon sa barrel natin, which has the riflings, indentions and markings will be embedded into the bullet, and that is already the signature of the firearm, the signature of the firearm on the bullet, engraved on the bullet. So every time that a bullet is being fired through a firearm, the firearm will leaves its impression to the bullet, and that is due to the rifling that is attached to the firearm itself. Okay, if it's very important also, not only in the field of investigation, but the firearm itself, the manufacture of the firearm itself, rifling is very important because it increases the accuracy, it increases the range of the bullet can travel, no? So I think there's really a significant contribution that riflings had brought into the field of forensic ballistic. We have also the trajectory. The term trajectory refers to the curved path of the projectile from the moment it leaves the gun muzzle until it reaches the target. So, contradictory to what we are seeing, no? Kasi usually we believe that the bullet travels a straight path, no, from the firearm to the target. That's actually not true because there is this trajectory na tinatawag. If we are going to observe the trajectory carefully, we will notice that the bullet really does not travel straight forward from the target, from the firearm to the target. Rather, it will increase, or it will rise for a moment, then will go down if it is already or nearing the subject. So, nagka-curve siya na tumataas, then bababa upon hitting the target. It's not straightforward as we usually think. So, yung tinatawag nating curve path na yan is known as the trajectory, yung pagtaas at pagbaba ng bullet upon its flight. Okay? We have also the range na tinatawag. Range refers to the linear distance between the gun muzzle to the target. Gaano kalayo yung kayang abutin ng bullet natin from the shooter itself, from the firearm. So that refers to the range. Actually, we have two classification of range na tinatawag. We have the accurate range, or otherwise known as the maximum effective range, and we have also the maximum range. Yung maximum effective range or accurate range refers to the specific distance of the target to the shooter, wherein the firer or the shooter has direct control where he wants to hit the bullet, no? what part of the target he wants to hit the bullet. Saan niya gustong ipatama yung bala ng kanyang baril. So habang may control pa siya, yun yung tinatawag nating accurate range. Yung kaya niyang ipatama kung saan niya gusto, or kayang ipatama ni shooter yung bala ng baril niya kung saan niya gusto. That is considered as the accurate range. Ang maximum range refers to yung pinakamalayo na distansya na kayang abutin ng bala ng isang baril. But okay, with regards to this, wala nang control ang shooter, no? Wala nang control ang shooter kung saan tatama yung bala ng baril niya. No? Kaya niya lang umabot siguro ng ganito kalayo, pero with regards to its accuracy, wala na. Kasi sabi nga natin, the principle of shooting is that the farther the distance the bullet will travel, the less accurate it becomes. So it may reach 2 kilometers, but it's no longer accurate, depending on the make of the firearm and the load of the gunpowder used in that certain ammunition. So yun yung mga factors, no? So we have the accurate range, maximum effective range, where the shooter or the firer has a control where he wanted to hit where he wanted the bullet to hit the target. No? While the maximum range refers to the farthest distance that the bullet can travel upon being fired onto the firearm. Okay? And lastly, we have the I think I know. And lastly, we have the air resistance, refers to the air drag. No, this refers to the force that opposes the forward motion of the projectile. So we know for a fact that when a bullet will hit or will travel, the distance of the firer to the shooter, there is this barrier na tinatawag. Yung barrier na yan cannot be seen by our naked eye. Rather, it's just there, no? Nandyan lang yan. Ito yung tinatawag nating air resistance. Yung gaano kabigat yung pagpigil ng hangin para either pahinain, pabagalin yung tinatawag nating uh, velocity, bullet velocity until it reaches the target. Kaya ito yung nagko-cause ng decrease on the accuracy of the uh, firearm, of the bullet hitting the target, because habang lumalayo ka, of course, mas lumalakas na yung tinatawag nating air resistance. No? Siyempre, pag malapit ka lang, the air resistance cannot do much change or effect onto the bullet velocity. Pero habang lumalayo ka, lumalakas din yung epekto ng air resistance, kasi the more it travels, the more air it has to come into contact, and the more contact he has to the air resistance, the lesser the slower, no, it becomes for the bullet velocity, or it is being slowed down by the air resistance. So that causes the inaccuracy. We have here the term terminal penetration, terminal energy. This will be the last, by the way. Terminal velocity and terminal accuracy. What are those? No? Terminal penetration refers to the depth of the bullet penetration. Na gaano kalalim yung penetrate ng bullet upon hitting the target. Okay? So, what are the factors that may cause the increase or decrease of terminal penetration? Such as we have, number one, powder charge. Gaano ba karami ang load ng ammunition na yun? No? Kaya may mga tinatawag tayong mga magnum. Ibig sabihin, they are being loaded in its maximum. Okay? So, pag mas malakas or mas marami ang loaded na gunpowder doon sa isang ammunition, you will expect that the terminal penetration will increase, no, will increase definitely, no, and also the distance will play part onto this, the distance of the shooter to the target. So the nearer you are, the higher or the deeper the terminal penetration on the target. The farther you are, the lesser it will cause terminal. It will cause to penetrate the bullet will cause, or the bullet will penetrate the target. Terminal energy refers to the striking power of the bullet upon hitting the target. So how strong the bullet is upon hitting the target. Usually ito yung nagkokos ng knockback effect eh. Yung pagtama ng bullet na yan, either matutumba kaya yung subject mo if we're talking about human target or other subject, no? That's the terminal energy, the striking power upon hitting the target. So pagtama niya, how how strong is the force na dala ng bullet na yan pag tama niya. Usually it's caused by ano, kasi pag the higher the caliber, I mean the measurement or the no, no, not the bore diameter, the higher the size of the larger the size of the bullet, of course the stronger the terminal energy is. So when we are talking about caliber 45, which is malalaki na yun, malalaki na yung mga bullet nila, pag tumama yan, mas mataas or mas malakas yung tinatawag nating terminal energy. So the determinants for the terminal energy is again, number one, the size of the bullet. And of course, when we talk about the size of the bullet, that will also include the load of the ammunition. Kasi pag mas malaki yung itutulak, yung ipropropel, no? The the higher the load should be, no? Kasi kung malaki yung itutulak mo, syempre mas dapat mas marami ka ang ilalagay na powder charge kumpara doon sa mga mas maliliit. So those are the determinants for that, for terminal energy, no? We have also terminal velocity. It refers to the speed of the projectile when it strikes the target. Gaano kalakas yung gaano kabilis yung travel ng bullet pag tama niya doon sa target. So again, the determinants for this also is number one, the caliber. Number two, the distance. Usually, ito lang naman yung mga tinitignan natin dito. When we talk about penetration, gaano ba kalayo si shooter? Gaano ba karami ang powder charts? Gaano ba kalaki ang bullet natin? The same thing with terminal energy, terminal velocity, and lastly, we have terminal accuracy. It refers to the size of the bullet group on the target. So, how accurate it is, no? How accurate the firearm is together with the shooter. I do believe the shooter is directly involved to this. No? Yung accuracy kasi is being measured by groupings doon sa ano eh, by groupings doon sa target natin mismo. So, let's say for example, multiple shot was fired and the target, the bullet strikes near each other on the target, so that shows accuracy. So, if the target receives several shots and those shots are group at a certain place, no? Magkakadikit halos sila, no? Na kung saan pare-parehas lang naman na baril ang ginamit, sunod-sunod pa. I mean, iisang baril lang ang ginamit, magkakasunod pang putok, pero yung pagtama niya is magkakadikit lang halos sila doon sa target. Then that measures the terminal accuracy. Okay, so those are the things that we need to know on the forensic ballistic. This is just an introductory part. I just covered the Unit 1 topic of the subject matter. I will be uploading the Unit 2 and 3 with regards to this subject matter. Now, if you have questions relative to what we discuss, just ask them right now, and then we can discuss on all of those. So that's it for the subject matter. I do hope you learned something, and if you have question, don't hesitate to ask question. Thank you for listening. Good day. Wala sila? Ha? Ay, dami.
Dumating sila?